In this video, I want to answer the question, what is a prism? Because prisms are all around us and most people don't even notice they're there. Notice, by the way, the spelling, P-R-I-S-M. Don't mix it up with those places we said naughty people, will you? Okay, now this is the shape that most people probably think of when they think of a prism, and this is a triangular prism for obvious reasons. And the reason I think most people think of this shape is it's similar to a tent. And if you've ever been on a campsite, you'll have seen hundreds of these, of course. Now, the important thing about a prism, it has to be the same shape and the same size all the way down its length. In this case, that's a triangle, of course, and we call this end the cross-section or the cross-sectional area. So it has to be the same cross-sectional area all the way down. It's no good if it gets larger or smaller or if it changes shape. So if we look at this cuboid, for example, this is a prism because the end is shaped as a rectangle, that size. The other end, it's the same shape and size, and it's that shape and size all the way down, of course. Now, some prisms are named after the shape of the end, the cross-sectional area, you'll remember. And in this case, we have a five-sided shape, which of course is a pentagon, and it's that same pentagon all the way down to the other end. So we can call this a pentagonal prism. And in the same way, this shape has a hexagon at the end of 6 sides, so obviously this is a hexagonal prism. Now, some shapes don't have a particular name. Here's a prism, for example. It's this cross shape all the way down. I suppose you could call it a cross prism, but that's not a proper mathematical term. Now, take a look at this shape. Is this a prism? Well, yes. It has a circle at one end, and that circle is the same size and the same shape all the way down to the other end. Now, this, of course, you'll probably recognise is a cylinder. So cylinders are prisms. But this gives me the opportunity just to mention one little thing about shapes in the real world. Mostly, they're not perfect. You see, this is nice and smooth at this end. It's smooth all the way down, but of course it's got this lump at the end here where the wick is. What I'd love to do, of course, is to get a sharp knife and cut that off. But if I did, you know what would happen, don't you? The power would fail tonight. My wife would say, "Oh, where's that nice big candle?" And that would be the end of me. So I'm afraid we're just going to have to leave it there. Now, this little shape I found in a garden centre. I have absolutely no idea what it is. But is it a prism? That's the important thing. Now, imagine I cut it here, and then I cut it here, and then I cut it here. Each time I cut it, we'll get a different cross-section. So at first sight, you probably think, well, that's not a prism. But this is where we need a little bit of imagination. If we look at the end shape, we look at this particular funny shape at the end here. If it helps you, you can imagine I've painted that white or something. And then if I take a cut this way, and another one, it will always be the same cross-section until it comes out at the other end. So this is in fact a prism. It's quite a short prism, it's only about 3 centimetres long. This one, 15 centimetres long. But it's still a prism nevertheless. Now take a look at this shape. This is one of my wife's lovely vases. Is this a prism? Well, it's circular at this end, and if I were to cut it here, or here, or here, I would get a circle. But of course, the circle is changing size, and you remember that the size must be the same all the way down. So it's no good if you've got a large cross-section, then a smaller one, then a larger one. That means it is definitely not a prism. It may be a lovely vase, but it's not a prism. Now, prisms come in all sorts of shapes, and as I say, you'll find them everywhere. Have a look at this, for example. This is the handrail from a staircase, the sort you might find in a supermarket, for instance, when you go down the stairs. There'll be metal supports under here holding it up. When it started life, it was, of course, a cuboid, a very long cuboid, and it's been through a machine with some very high-speed cutters that cut away all the unwanted wood and leave this beautiful handrail shape. Now, here is another type of handrail, and this is the sort that fixes to a wall. The wall would be here, and this would be screwed to the wall. It's the sort of one they'd have in, say, an old people's home to help old people steady themselves as they walk through the corridors. And I have to tell you, it won't be very long. I shall need one of these myself. So I hope you will see that there are many different shapes and sizes of prism. They're not all triangular, like this simple one, by any means. As you walk around, have a good look and you will find hundreds and hundreds of them. You'll quickly learn to spot them. You'll find them in garden centres particularly, at builders' merchants, all those sort of places, so keep the old beady eye open. Here are a few examples. By the way, talking of triangular prisms, there's something rather odd about this one. Now here I have a pair of my trusty post office scales. These are for weighing letters and parcels, and if I set them to 0 and put my hexagonal prism on there, that weighs 12 grams. If I take my cross-shaped prism and put that on there, that weighs 17 grams. And if I put my trusty triangular prism on there, that weighs 211 grams. So, as I suspected, there is something very odd about this one, so let's have a look inside and see what we can find. Aha! Just as I expected. Inside, there is another prism. This time, covered in nice silver paper. Now, if I just rub the side there, I'm sure you can guess what's inside. What you're thinking, of course, is lots of little prisms. I can see that. Let's open it up and have a look, shall we? Aha. Yes, just as I thought. My favourite chocolate bar. Now, if you look at each of these little, well, what you might think are prisms, you'll see they're actually thicker at the bottom than they are at the top. So if I were to slice my way through them, it wouldn't be the same cross-sectional area all the time. It would be thicker at the bottom than at the top. So they're not actually prisms. So you're going to be very disappointed about that, of course. I, on the other hand, am going to be delicified. My favourite. Oh, do you know, I've waited all day for that.